I don't know why people are not talking about this manga even though it's really popular. I haven't seen any good videos about this manga or even people reviewing it, so I decided to make a review about All You Need Is Kill. By the way, it was my first manga. I have read it a couple of years ago, so I'm really biased. All You Need Is Kill really made me fall in love with mangas, and if you have watched my previous videos, you know that I used to hate reading books. All You Need Is Kill is the manga adaptation of the science fiction light novel of the same name. While the original novel was released in 2004, the manga adaptation was made 1 decade later to coincide with the release of the movie adaptation, Edge of Tomorrow. While the original story was created and written by Hiroshi Sakurazaka, the manga adaptation was penned by Ryosuke Takeuchi, who wrote the story for Moriarty the Patriot, and illustrated by Takeshi Obata, who normally works with Tsugumi Oba and did the art of Death Note and Bakuman. We have some great background experiences with authors, so we know what we are going to see. Not we, I mean you guys, I have already read it. Strange creatures known as mimics have invaded Earth, sparkling a global war that has humanity fighting for a survival. In response, mankind forms the United Defense Force, a joint organization whose purpose is to overcome this new threat. Dedicated to the extermination of the growing mimic menace, soldiers are plunged into battle wearing special exoskeleton combat suits in an attempt to gain the upper hand against their foes. It's only 17 chapters, so you're gonna finish it within an hour. New recruiter Keiji Kirie is immediately killed after his very first deployment, but to his shock, he wakes up exactly 1 day before his unit was dropped into a mimic invasion. After experiencing the same event yet again, he realizes that he is stuck in a time loop triggered by his death. As he relives the day of the battle hundreds of times, Keiji begins to make use of what he has learned about the phenomenon, gradually building up his strength and improving his skills so that eventually, when he comes face to face with death once more, he will be ready to change his fate. Both the manga and movie were released at around the same time, so they really only had the original source material as a basis, which means there are quite a few differences. As someone who has seen, read and really likes both adaptations, it's clear that there have been taken a lot more artistic liberties with the movie than with the manga, which does stick a lot closer to the novel. However, both manage to tell essentially the same story really well, and most of the changes do make sense due to the difference in mediums. I do slightly prefer the manga though, which I think is mostly due to the characters in the manga being a bit more appealing to me, even though Tom Cruise is a great actor. When it comes to the story, there really isn't a lot to say as it's pretty self-explanatory. Saying anything more than that would just ruin the experience, as the manga itself only has 17 chapters and takes maybe an hour to read through. It's quite short. However, the length of the story is one of the reasons why I love this manga so much. It really doesn't mess around at all, and by that I mean that not one panel is wasted. Every single piece of dialogue or drawing drives the story forward in some way. I have heard people complain about this very thing and claim that it is simply poor pacing, but I completely disagree. This fast pacing is precisely what keeps you on your toes and constantly invested in the story, and it really makes you as the reader feel the same sense of urgency as the protagonist. When it comes to the characters, there is once again not much one can say without spoiling the entire manga, but I think that as far as action manga go, they are quite good and have notable development throughout the story, especially considering how short it is. Lastly, the art, in particular during the fight scenes, you can really feel the weight of the characters' movements. There is just the right amount of detail in every panel and it's perfectly readable at all times, which is exactly what a lot of manga can get quite right. Even Berserk, which is one of my favorite manga and is known for its absolute breathtaking art, has issues with readability at times. The usage of contrasts with some really heavy blacks is also something that I find is oftentimes missing in a lot of action manga, but it really makes the drawings pop despite being black and white. All You Need Is Kill takes one of my favorite ideas of science fiction, the time loop, and puts it in a militaristic setting. While it is not exactly a new idea, it is brilliantly approached and used. The effects of the loop are fairly evident to Keiji, who learns a bit more with each iteration, but also descends further in despair. The other protagonist, who understands the first protagonist's situation, is properly introduced and brings something new to the story. This protagonist's presence also makes this entertaining story into a more emotional one. This gives a fairly decent amount of depth to it and making it much more enjoyable than it first seems. Because of the nature of the story and its small size, the side characters are not really explored. The relationship of the two protagonists is predictable and a bit cheesy, but not boring. The final touch of it is hugely emotional and only happens because of a fairly interesting and logical twist. Of course, I'm not gonna show it. The art by Takashi Obata is pretty great and full of details, but perhaps a bit too full. It doesn't pack any punches in showing the dismembered bodies of soldiers and aliens, and also captures pretty well the atmosphere of a chaotic battleground. That was all I wanted to say. I'm trying to be consistent with uploading videos, so stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe to give us a motivation to upload more, and of course, thanks a lot for watching.